Welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining. Today we are starting our review of Educational Philosophies, and we'll begin with a friendly map of where we are going together. By the end of this module, you will know what topics we will cover, how each part is set up, what the LET usually asks about this area, and the simple strategies that make answering those questions much easier. Think of this session as your guide for the whole journey. We will look at ideas about teaching and learning that have been shaped over more than 100 years, starting from the older, more traditional views, and moving all the way to the newer ones that focus on things like global learning and inclusion. Don't worry if some terms sound new right now. We will unpack each one slowly and clearly. So why do we spend so much time on educational philosophy? The short answer is that this topic comes up again and again in the LET more than almost any other area in professional education. But it is not only about passing the exam. Philosophy is the foundation that everything else stands on. The way teachers plan their lessons, the way they design what students learn, and even the way they test understanding all come from a particular way of thinking about education. Another important point is that the LET does not just ask you to memorize definitions. It often gives you a short classroom story and asks you to recognize which philosophy is being shown. The same idea can also appear in different question styles: a direct question, a scenario, or a compare and contrast item. And once you really understand each philosophy, you can use a smart trick. Even when you are not sure of the answer, you can eliminate the choices that clearly do not fit. That alone can save you a lot of points. Now let's look at part 1 of the course. This is where we focus on the 7 main philosophies that show up most often in the LET. You can see them here: Essentialism, Progressivism, Constructivism, Perennialism, Pragmatism, Existentialism, and Social Reconstructionism. Each one has its own way of answering the big questions. What should be taught? How should it be taught? And what is the real purpose of school? We will spend one section on each, going through the ideas in a clear, simple way so you can picture what a classroom looks like under each philosophy. Once you can see the differences between them, even the trickiest exam questions start to feel manageable. Part 2 moves into the newer ways of thinking about education. We will go through 10 of these emerging philosophies. They reflect the world we live in today: classrooms that include students from many backgrounds, education that continues throughout life, the role of technology, and a growing care for the environment. We won't go as deep into each one as we did with Part 1 because they appear less often in the LET, but they are showing up more and more as the exam updates itself to match what is happening in real schools. The main thing here is to recognize the name of each philosophy and the simple idea behind it. So if it pops up in an exam question, you know exactly what it means. Let me show you what you can expect inside every section of this course. First, you get clear, easy-to-follow explanations of each idea. Second, you get practice questions that look just like the ones in the real LET, including those tricky scenario types where you have to read a short classroom story and pick the best answer. Third, we walk you through the thinking process: how to spot clue words, how to remove wrong options, and how to land on the best choice. And finally, each section ends with quick review tips so you remember the most important points and the famous names linked to each philosophy. The same structure repeats every time, so once you finish one section, the rest feels familiar and easier to handle. Let's walk through a simple 5-step plan you can use whenever you face a philosophy question in the LET. Step 1. Read the whole scenario first before you even look at the choices. Ask yourself what the teacher is doing and what the students are doing. Step 2. Look out for clue words like timeless truths, learning by doing, or social justice. Each of these phrases points to a specific philosophy. Step 3. Think about the teacher's role. Is the teacher acting as a strict authority, a gentle facilitator, a mentor, or someone pushing for change? That role usually matches one philosophy perfectly. Step 4. Cross out the obviously wrong options. Even if you are unsure, removing the bad answers gives you a much better chance. And Step 5. Pick the best fit, not just any fit. If 2 answers seem close, choose the one that explains the whole scenario, not just one small part of it. Follow these 5 steps and you'll feel a lot more in control during the test. Here's a quick cheat sheet of clue words for each philosophy. Think of these as the little signals that tell you which philosophy a question is really talking about. For example, if you see words like core subjects or back to basics, you are looking at essentialism. If you see learning by doing or student-centered, that's progressivism. Prior knowledge and meaning-making point to constructivism. Timeless truths and great books mean perennialism. Practical and useful point to pragmatism. Individual freedom and personal meaning point to existentialism. And anything about social justice or being a change agent points to social reconstructionism. Sometimes the question even drops the name of a famous thinker straight into the text, so knowing both the clue words and the key names linked to each philosophy gives you a real edge. Try to memorize these pairings. They will save you in the exam room. Let's talk about where to spend your study time. Not every philosophy gets the same attention in the LET, so think of what follows as a priority list. At the top, in the very high group, you have Essentialism, Progressivism, Constructivism, and Pragmatism. These four show up almost every sitting, sometimes 3 to 5 times in a single exam, so they deserve your strongest focus. Next come Perennialism and Social Reconstructionism, which appear regularly but a little less often. After that, in the moderate group, we have Existentialism, Humanism, Critical Pedagogy, and Inclusive Education. Do watch out for the mix-up between existentialism and humanism, because it trips up many test takers. Finally, the emerging group covers newer ideas like globalism, environmentalism, and digital humanism. They are growing in importance as the LET evolves. The smart move is to master the top group first, then steadily work your way down. Now let's look at some pairs that often get mixed up. These are the ones the LET loves to test because they sound similar but mean different things. First, progressivism and constructivism both involve active learners, but progressivism is more about real-world hands-on activities, while constructivism is about how each learner builds knowledge inside their own head. Next, pragmatism and progressivism. Pragmatism is the bigger idea about truth being what works, while progressivism is the classroom version of that idea. Then existentialism and humanism both care about the individual, but existentialism focuses on freedom and finding your own meaning, while humanism focuses on caring for the whole person. Essentialism and perennialism are both teacher-led, but essentialism teaches today's basic subjects, while perennialism teaches the timeless classics. And finally, social reconstructionism and critical pedagogy both push for social justice, but reconstructionism is the broader vision, while critical pedagogy zooms in on dialogue and helping students see the world more clearly. Spotting these small differences is exactly what separates a good answer from the best answer. Here are some friendly tips to help you get the most out of this course. First, go through the sections in order. The early ones build the foundation, and ideas like essentialism and progressivism actually become clearer when you compare them side by side. Second, never skip the classroom examples. That is exactly how the LET tests you, by showing a scene and asking what it represents. Third, when you reach the practice questions, take them seriously. Answer first, then read the explanation. That way you learn from your own thinking, not just from the answer key. Fourth, memorize the famous names linked to each philosophy. Sometimes the exam doesn't describe a philosophy at all. It just drops a name and asks what that thinker believed. Fifth, keep track of the questions you get wrong and figure out why. Your mistakes show you exactly where to focus next. And finally, trust the process. 17 philosophies sound like a lot, but if you take it step by step, it really does come together. We've reached the end of the overview. You are ready to begin. By now, you have the big picture. You know what this course covers, how each section is laid out, what the LET likes to test, and how to think your way through the questions. Educational philosophies might sound heavy at first, but it is actually one of the most rewarding parts of the exam, because once you understand how each philosophy views teaching, learning, and the purpose of school, the questions start to feel almost predictable. When you sit down with a tough question, come back to the simple tool we keep repeating. Ask yourself what the teacher is doing, and what that tells you about what kind of education is being shown. Take your time, work through every section carefully, and do every practice test. You've got this. Let's start with Section 1 on Essentialism. To wrap up, here are the main sources that shaped everything we have discussed in this course. You don't need to memorize the reference list, but it is useful to know that the ideas you have just learned come from a long line of real educational thinkers. If a topic ever sparks your curiosity, feel free to look up the original works. Reading even a few pages from the actual authors can really deepen your understanding. And as a small bonus, getting familiar with the names of these thinkers can help you in the exam, since the LET sometimes mentions them directly. Thank you for following along, and I wish you all the best as you begin your study of each philosophy in detail.